4 fire units were called to the club just after 1 o'clock last night, less than half an hour after closing. The fire was quickly contained, but damage was extensive. Nearly every room has been damaged by fire, smoke and water. It was a bleak Sunday morning for members who've taken the site from a tin shed to one of the district's most respected bowling clubs.
I don't know, it's just one of those things, it's just heartbreaking.
The damage bill is expected to exceed $500,000, but the building is insured and members say they'll rebuild. But the club won't be closed for long, with temporary facilities to be built.
I think mainly the ladies' facilities are all intact, their kitchen seems to be intact. Just a matter of putting temporary bar and equipment up there.
Richard O'Leary, NBN News. The police scientific squad photographed the crime scene this morning to help establish the last few vital minutes before the shooting. They know the power was cut from the Victoria Street house in Torres near Lake Macquarie just after 9 o'clock last night. 27-year-old Peter Brendan Jones went to fix the problem but didn't return. His 21-year-old de facto wife heard a scuffle in the backyard and was on her way to investigate when she heard shots.
Just as she got up, there was a gunshot that she heard, so she went towards the back door, and as she got to the back door, she heard another gunshot as well. She then raced and dialed 000 and called the emergency services.
The man was taken to John Hunter Hospital with bullet wounds to the neck and his right arm. He was later transferred to Royal North Shore Hospital with suspected spinal injuries. Police have little to go on. The bandit was wearing a balaclava and a motive has not been established. The incident follows the shooting of a 47-year-old video store owner, Dennis Gardner, at the back of his Torres shop in June. The man was confronted by 2 masked bandits, one man firing, injuring Gardner in the arm and chest.
Well, we're keeping an open mind, obviously, but at this stage of the investigation, there's no reason to link the two.
Richard O'Leary, NBN News. Strong southwesterlies fanned the flames towards Fishery Point Road at Morisset. The road was blocked as 3 regular brigades and 6 bushfire units started backburning using fire to fight fire. Brigades worked frantically to stop the fire from jumping the road, but some neighbours had seen it all before and carried on with everyday chores. Late this afternoon, the fire had been contained. 40 hectares of bush had been burnt, but no property was damaged.
While the big dry knows no boundaries, it seems the federal government does, announcing 6 drought-affected areas will miss out on drought aid. Scone and Merriwa, Mudgee, Nyngan, Dubbo and Grafton are unable to receive the new drought relief payment and interest rate subsidies. It's hit a political nerve. Deputy Premier Ian Armstrong is touring drought-stricken areas. He says people on the land need more help, not less.
There's no doubt that this is the most severe drought that I've ever seen in my lifetime. I've seen it as dry before, but never as extensive as this.
State member for the Upper Hunter, George Souris, says he is appalled by the ruling, calling it a callous lack of understanding. The trouble is 149 farmers in the 6 excluded areas have already registered for aid, believing they were eligible. The letdown must come as a real blow in these already desperate times. Federal Primary Industries Minister Bob Collins says Scone and Merriwa haven't been suffering under drought long enough to register for the aid. Peter Ryan, NBN News. Activities are slowly getting back to normal in the classrooms at Swansea Public after fire raced through the school 9 days ago. To mark the return to lessons for the 300 students, teachers handed back work that had been saved from the inferno. 10 classrooms were damaged and they were quickly replaced by demountables. A specialist cleaning firm helped salvage some items, but the total damages bill is expected to top the $500,000 mark. A 23-year-old Swansea man has been charged with malicious damage in relation to the fire. Peter Ryan, NBN News.
"150 Australian and overseas delegates are in Newcastle to discuss ways of sharpening Australia's competitiveness in the international marketplace. There's an alarming new factor creeping into the reckoning.
We're approaching a situation, our mines are very getting older and mature. Some of them have been going for more than 20 years and they're starting to approach their ultimate economic dig depth.
Australia relies heavily on its open cuts to combat the efficiencies of North American competitors.
If we do not find other ways of increasing that potential to keep those open cuts going, a lot of our drag lines are going to become dinosaurs.
Rather than quit the mines where coal has been exhausted, most companies are investigating ways of digging deeper into previously unobtainable reserves, increasing the depth of open cuts by half and doubling their lifespans. A review of a proposed coal cooperative research centre at Newcastle University will also be presented during the 3-day conference. Andrew Lobb, NBN News.
The men were first treated at the Cessnock Casualty Ward at around 11 o'clock last night. Dr. John Holly was on duty at the time.
They punch people, kick people, and they seems as if something is surrounding them and trying to pick on them. Really very frightening experience.
A number of hospital staff were assaulted by the men, who were aged between 20 and 30. Dr. Holly was bitten on the arm. Once sedated, the men were taken to Newcastle's Mater Hospital, where they also attacked staff, forcing ambulances to be diverted to other hospitals for 3 hours while the men were treated.
They're all quite seriously affected by the hallucinogenic plant that they'd ingested, and all of them were actively hallucinating, quite delirious, confused. Some of them were very combative because they were seeing things that were out to get them.
It's believed the men boiled a plant known as Angel's Trumpet. It grows wild in most areas, particularly on the north coast. Dr. Ian White of the Martyrs Toxicology Unit believes the men could have died.
Some of them had taken enough that if they hadn't been fit young men may well have caused significant problems, potentially have died from the actual toxicity of the compound.
It could be another 24 hours before the men are fully recovered. Late this afternoon, 4 of them were still hallucinating and heavily sedated. Jodie McKay, NBN News.
Last Saturday was the first meeting at Beaumont Park with reduced TAB coverage. In the past, the TAB had covered the whole meeting. Now it covers just 4 events, having a direct effect on off and on-course turnover, plus the overall viability of racing at Beaumont Park. Responding to the cutback, the club has reduced prize money.
Our prize money up till this present cut has been measurably higher than most other greyhound tracks in this area.
But the move has upset owners and trainers who met yesterday to discuss the club's decision. The owners and trainers want the prize money restored to previous levels before they negotiate further changes, or they'll take drastic action, which could threaten next Saturday's and future meetings.
We will urge or ask our owners and trainers members to withhold nominations for Saturday until we get a meeting with them again to negotiate and to listen to us again. And we're pretty set on our ways.
Instead of paint, flour, water bombs and HSC hijinks, students of Cardiff High are putting their energies into odd jobs. Most are helping out at local primary schools. It was the students' own idea. Some of this group, former pupils returning to their old primary school at Hillsborough.
It'll give the school a better positive image about like the community thinks about the school, and so that Year 12 students can do more than just wreck things and do something positive.
Because I didn't really want to leave primary school, and I find it's good to come back, and it's really a strange feeling to come back to primary school after leaving high school.
For the past few years, Cardiff High students have undertaken worthwhile projects after breakup. They feel it's giving a little back and a constructive way to leave their mark.
It's worthwhile, instead of painting graffiti, which will probably be removed anyway.
I think the community gets that idea that our kids in Year 12 are just, kids that are just out for a good time. But I disagree with it. I think we've got a wonderful group of kids coming out. I think the country's in really safe hands.
Just a day after a communications link was established between Alan Neighbour and his wife Cindy at home in Newcastle, news is filtering through of a lone yachtsman's nightmare. British sailor Josh Hall on the 18-metre Gartmore Investments struck a submerged object in the South Atlantic Ocean off Africa. It gashed a metre-long hole in the bow of the boat. Hall was fighting a losing battle to keep the boat afloat.
Huge hole up forward. It has fractured the bulkhead and it fractured the hull on the inside of the watertight bulkhead, so we were taking water into the main part of the boat.
Alan Neighbour on board Newcastle, Australia was the closest help, beating against strong headwinds and big seas to rendezvous for the rescue. Just minutes later, he spoke to NBN News.
3 hours ago, I probably had him in site, and then I came up alongside the boat, and he had a life raft inflated, and we sort of did the transfer that way. I came up and jibed my boat next to his, and he sort of blew over with the wind over. He had to cut the line, and he was on his own there for a while, and then I had to pick him up over from the life raft.
Josh Hall paid tribute to his rescuer.
I'm just incredibly grateful to Alan for being so close. I'm glad he was a tough competitor, otherwise he'd been further away.
The Race Coordination Centre at Charleston, USA has been monitoring the rescue.
So what, will Alan take Josh to Cape Town, or will you have him picked up?
I can't answer the question on that. Let's get him off first and then we'll worry about the rest. Yes, by all means let him ride to Cape Town and
Yes, exactly.
make Josh do the cooking or something. I don't know.
Yeah, Alan might get something decent to eat.
The Ombudsman's office lodged the questions with Council on 13 separate matters after a community representative alleged Council had contravened its local environment plan and development control plan in allowing some work to go ahead. Many of the questions aim to determine whether Council has fully considered the ramifications of the Pinny Beach scheme. Questions have also been raised over what action Council has taken over several instances of illegal clearing alleged to have taken place.
Council's in that position where it's trying to balance up the community's expectations as well as the developers' expectations, and at this stage some elements in the community say we've been too lenient, the developer says we've been too hard.
The Ombudsman's letter also queries the extent to which former approvals and development guidelines for the original proposal still apply now the plan has been changed from an integrated tourist complex to residential development. While the questions could lead to an investigation, Council says they're routine and purely intended to gather background information.
There's nothing to hide. We've done the correct thing up till now. I'm sure the Ombudsman will find that as well. Hopefully his investigation will allow some people in the community who aren't satisfied to accept that we are performing properly.
They drink coffee and play Pictionary to while away the hours. So far, there are 9 avid art collectors lined up outside the Von Berto Gallery in Cooks Hill. By Friday, that will grow tenfold. Hepsy Hoyle has been camping since last Friday. It's her 5th year.
It's worth waiting in line for. I mean, over the years I've got some lovely paintings, and it's just sort of I like to meet the same people each year.
And this year, this is what they're waiting to buy. There are more than 400 pieces on sale from around 150 well-known artists. All are priced under $333. And that's a great buy for works like this by Pro Hart or this sketch by Sydney Nolan. Local artist David Middlebrook also has works for sale, so too Arthur Boyd and his son Jamie. There are pieces to suit every taste, as well as pottery, jewellery and woodwork. The public will be allowed in to view the exhibition on Thursday. Sales will begin at 7 o'clock Friday night.
The 86-year-old victim was in his Albert Street flat in Taree at about 8 o'clock last night when an intruder burst in, threatening him with a kitchen knife and demanding money or credit cards.
The elderly man escaped after being attacked and bound in his own home. The offender gained entry through this kitchen window.
The elderly gentleman was tied up with the phone cord and it was placed face down in the lounge room area of the flat.
The attacker had allegedly stolen the man's car, which was later spotted at Port Macquarie. Police swooped and a 21-year-old man was arrested in the early hours of this morning. Port Macquarie man David Keogh appeared in the Foster local court today, charged with a variety of bashing and stealing-related offences. Bail was refused by Magistrate Gary O'Keefe because of the serious nature of the allegations. Keogh was remanded in custody and is due to appear in the Taree local court this Friday. Tracy Walsh, NBN News.
Charm. Leicester kicked and is full of running past the 200 mark from Grand Connection on the outside. Sir Bernard close to the fence, but Leicester is well clear, and it's a double coming up for Brian Guy. Leicester runs out an easy winner. Calvados Charm got up for second, Grand Connection third.
The winner paid $7.30 and $2. The trifecta a healthy $234.80. Casino also hosted 8 races. Our best raced 7 over 1,900 metres.
And battling on then was Go Lightly and River Tour. Tugan Star dashed the lead inside the 150, a mount and another boss, but Tugan Star full of running out in the middle of the track as the leader, and Tugan Star will come away to beat a mount and another boss. Go Lightly and Tudor County.
Tugan Star paid $4.20 and $1.80. The trifecta $600.70.
This is a story of a backyard business that is now one of the leaders in its field across the world. Airborne Windsport started 10 years ago, teaching people how to fly. 5 years later, they began building motorised hang gliders or trikes, and then traditional hang gliders.
In the last 5 years, we've had about 30% growth each year, which we've been happy with, so, being as though there's been a recession out there. So it's been a bit surprising.
Former world champion hang glider pilot Ricky Duncan is one of the company's directors. Rick's reputation has helped promote sales in countries like the US, the UK and across Europe. A shipment of gliders is ready to go to Japan and Brazil. Business is sky high.
This year we expect to turn over $3.5 million.
The company has just moved into a new factory at Redhead, 3 times the size of their old one, and they're now chasing lucrative markets across Asia. Peter Ryan, NBN News.
Just 60% of school students have been immunised against measles in Taree. Children and teenagers are the most at risk of catching the virus. An 8-year-old was admitted to the Manning Base Hospital last week, suffering from a severe case of measles. 2 children died in Queensland this year due to complications.
Often
parents and public just think of measles as an everyday disease that kids get, but it is a very serious disease. Kids can get pneumonia, bronchitis and ear infections and brain infections from measles. They're the complications. They don't happen in every case, but certainly enough times for us to be concerned.
Peter Massey says the 30 reported cases in the area are just the tip of the iceberg. At least double that number go unreported. The Public Health Unit recommends children be taken to the family doctor or council clinic to be immunised. School programs will soon be introduced at Bulahdelah and Foster.
The outbreak in Taree and Wingham areas certainly is one of the most serious outbreaks in New South Wales at the moment.
Tracy Walsh, NBN News.
He just sent the there's another mate I'm with the metal workers or something. Can't get a jump. Hey Jim. That guy the boat. Right. Because you're an arsehole. No, I'm not. Yes.
The Hunter Region Botanic Gardens were established in 1986 by interested community members. Since then, they've largely been maintained and managed by a team of 50 volunteers, with an operating budget totalling $60,000 annually. That money raised through donations and one-off grants. Covering 140 hectares, the local venue is 5 times the size of the Royal Sydney Botanic Gardens. Volunteers are now saying the caretaker's job has become too demanding, especially with the garden's opening hours expanding from 3 to 7 days.
As a result, our visitation has shot up, our income from shop and from donations has risen, but the demands on our volunteers, as I mentioned, a lot of them are elderly, has greatly increased.
While launching a 5-year management plan for the gardens, lower Hunter councils were asked to contribute around $90,000, this allowing the employment of 3 full-time gardening staff.
So what we're suggesting is a pro rata basis for the lower Hunter councils might contribute some funding each year, and the funding needn't be actual cash, it can be support in kind, like the provision of gardeners and assistant gardeners.
The results benefiting the entire community.
I mean, tourism, they say it's the 4th largest growing industry in Australia. We have immense potential here to attract many more people, and of course that injects funding into the Hunter economy.
Catherine Lamond, NBN News. Water levels in the lower Hunter's three main supplies, Tomago Sandbeds, Chichester and Grahamstown dams, are just below 65% capacity. At the 60% mark, restrictions would be enforced, beginning with the limiting of sprinkler usage. While intermittent showers like this one offer some reprieve, the overall trend is that our water supply is dropping. Currently, it's reducing by just over 1% a week, and at that rate, the 60% mark will be reached by late November. Managing Director of Hunter Water Corporation, David Evans, says Hunter residents are typically economical users of water and doesn't believe, initially anyway, fines would be needed.
Our previous experience has been that people react very well to warnings. We can also threaten to put a disc in their water meter so that the flow of water is greatly reduced.
However, if the situation worsens, he says fines may be an option. The Upper Hunter's three water retainers can collectively hold 7 times more than the Lower Hunter. Glenbourne, Glennies Creek and Lostock are all looking healthy, needing to drop to around 30% before restrictions would be recommended. On the Central Coast, the area's main water supplier, Mangrove Creek Dam, is at a comfortable 58% full, not warranting any immediate enforcement of water restrictions.